Good morning, Rugby. It's Sunday morning, March 29th, our last Sunday in March, week 3 of doing online teaching. And so there's several things I'm missing this morning. One of the things, missing a little sunshine. It's gray and overcast today. This whole process is kind of weird for me. I'm used to being the one doing the talking, but I miss that nonverbal feedback, the way of knowing that people are tracking and with you by seeing their reactions as you talk. I miss that physical presence. I'm learning to rely on your spiritual presence, even though I cannot see you face to face, to know that you are active and working and supporting each other and the people God is putting in your path. I miss Gunner's jokes. It's became part of my Sunday ritual to see what new joke Gunner had for me. And I do miss the reassurance of being together. But God will find new ways to encourage us this week. And so towards that end, I want to tell you about a few things that I'm working on. One, I'm planning next week to do this live stream, 10 a.m., next Sunday morning, April the 4th, so that it might have a little different feel or impact, that we're all on together at the same time. It is still a one-way communication, but we could do that together, and there'd be a place for some feedback even as we gather. Second thing is I will be doing another psalm for Wednesday night. And I've started an email that I hope to do frequently during the week, just as another way of encouragement, because apparently we're going to be doing this for a while, because the governor's order that no groups of 10 or more to meet right now is currently in effect till April the 23rd. And it could be extended beyond that depending on how things are going. So stay encouraged and stay connected. Today, we're going to talk about John 5. We've been working our way through John. We've had Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman at the end of chapter 4. I didn't really talk about last week, but you have the healing of the official son. John is continuing to show us how Jesus is moving through the world. From that being born again to living water. The healing of the official son shows faith. But today, it's something different. So let's start in John 5, verse 1. If you have your Bibles, read along. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" I have a lot of questions about that question. I want to hear Jesus' inflection. What was his intent? Was he trying to get this guy unstuck? Was he trying to help him see that things did not need to remain the same, even though they had been the same for a long time? It's hard to interpret what the intent was there. So I don't want to read too much into what Jesus is saying, but it is a great question. Do you want to get well? Because it's easy to get stuck. Verse 7, "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." You see, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, they gather around this pool in hope of healing. They believed as the water moved, maybe because it was an active spring, that if you were the first one in, you could receive healing. But after 38 years, he had not been the fastest. And who knows how often it stirred. Maybe they would wait days and weeks for it to stir, and then out of some kind of competition, if you're not the fastest to get down to the pool, they gathered around the pool now, maybe not in expectation of that healing, but to be shown mercy. It was a place where people could donate to them. This was an active, vibrant area, much like we see today, people holding signs on the side of the highway because they know people will be passing by. These people who were lame and paralyzed and blind would wait for the mercy of other people. And today they're not understanding what John, I think, is trying to show us. There could be a greater mercy, a greater stirring among them. And it was not defined by their physical limitations. So verse 8, Jesus simply says to the man, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once, the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. After 38 years, instant change. Oftentimes we think of change as a process, and it is. It's long and drawn out. But for this man on this day, it was not. And the real question for me is, he can now walk, but can he see? Does he really fully realize what's going on here? That more than just being able to walk is offered. And then last part of 9, we get to the real problem. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. Jesus, didn't you know better than this? Kind of seems to be the intent here, because look at verse 10. And so the Jewish leader said to the man who had been healed, "It is a Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." And I don't know what that sentence does for you, but it just rings like a clanging gong. Here is a lame man walking and carrying his mat, and they focus on that's against the law. And notice the man kind of joins in with them. He says in verse 11, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.' It's not my fault." They follow in verse 12. So they asked him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick up and walk?" Seem to be missing the whole point. Verse 13, the man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." Now notice what the man does immediately. The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well. You know, the man, I get it. The man had a place. It was not optimum, but it was workable. The way things were good enough. And notice that this healing was not based on the man's faith or that he was deserving. Jesus seems to single this man out, but it wasn't because he showed this incredible faith in Jesus that he was healed. And he, in fact, the man, misses the good that God is doing. He seems to be more worried about being in trouble. Oh no, he's broke the law, and now he's reporting on the guy. Not my fault. This guy told me to do it. And you know, I get that. Growing up, people who know me today may find this surprising, but I was very compliant. I did what I was supposed to do. I did what I was told. Teachers liked me because I didn't cause trouble. I went along. I had to learn not to seek to get what I wanted, but to work for what God wanted. And sometimes the rules don't support that. To start looking for what God is doing rather than how do I not have what I want and how do I stay out of trouble. So, verse 16. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I am too working." For this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So not only was the man who was healed missing part of the point, not seeing truly what was happening here, the church people in the story miss what God's doing. This event was beyond their rules, beyond their ability to control. Somebody was working outside of their structure and power. And here's the really interesting thing. The man didn't really break the Sabbath because the rule, honor the Sabbath and keep it holy, does not define the smaller items. What was happening here was the rabbis had said simple things like picking up your mat would be considered work, and therefore it is breaking the law. So he wasn't breaking the law as much as breaking their interpretation of the law. And it misses the whole point. The law is not there to tell us the limit of how far we need to go. The law was there as a starting point. And Jesus, time and time again, calls us to go beyond the law. Think about the idea of going the second mile. They were required by the Romans, by law, if a Roman officer or soldier wanted them to carry something, they had to go a mile. So the Jews even put up markers from their houses so that when they got to the mile marker, they wouldn't go any further. They did what they had to do. But Jesus calls us to go beyond the rules. The rules are just a starting point. It's the least we should do. And Jesus says we can go further, not just what is required. Jesus was concerned about this man's transformation, not just keeping their rules of what it means to work and not work. He was concerned with something different. Jesus had just showed he could heal a man even without the man's faith. In a sense, he didn't deserve it because he showed faith. That's how people think, isn't it? That's how we still think. Well, we get what we deserve. You work hard, you get good things. And that's a good general rule, but sometimes you work hard and it doesn't happen. Sometimes you work hard and you get laid off because of other circumstances. So what's Jesus really doing here? He is showing us he is doing his Father's work. Notice verse 19. Jesus gave them this answer. "Very truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does." What a great line. I think John's telling us that's what Jesus is trying to show us. Jesus does it because the Father does it. We do it because the Father and the Son have done it. Verse 20, "For the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. Yes, he will show him even greater works than these, so that you will be amazed. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it. Moreover, the Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. Verse 24, very truly I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life, who will not be judged, but has crossed over from death to life. Very truly I tell you, a time is coming, and has now come, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself. And he has given him authority to judge, because he is the Son of Man. And then the passage closes, verse 28 through 30, with these words. Do not be amazed at this, for a time is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done what is good will rise to live, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned. By myself I can do nothing. I judge only as I hear, and my judgment is just, for I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. Hear that last sentence again. I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. So here are some thoughts in closing today. It's easy to become satisfied that this is just the way things are, and life is good enough. And we can miss what God is doing today, what he is calling us to, the resurrection that he offers. And sometimes we get lost in our questions and our need to have the answers. Well, we're living through something right now in the middle of this virus, lockdown, what in the world is happening. I have lots of questions, but not a lot of good answers, because I want to know how this will end. And so I get lost in the questions because I do not see that ending. But rather than needing answers to the questions, I think the questions should direct us. I want to get over thinking about how this will end, when it will be over, because so many things are circles, are loops, and loops and circles do not end. Here's what I think Jesus is pushing us to. What is the next right thing to do? What is the next right step to take? Rather than knowing the full outcome, what's in front of me and what should happen next? What do I do next? Where's God directing me? We do not take God to everybody else to fix all their circumstances so it'll be over, because this life has difficulties and struggles. The true choice is not the expectation everything's going to fix, and that we have all the answers. But the true choice is we can join him in what he is doing. And hurry up, I need to catch up. And the purpose of what God is doing is to bring life, not take away struggle, not to make it easy. You know, the American dream. I have what I want, and there's no sacrifice on my part. Rather, God calls us to bring life, and not to think that people should only get what they deserve, but to take to them this call so that they can hear this call to life. So here's the question today. How will you join God in what he is offering to the world? And what is the next right step for you to do? Be safe, Rugby. Stay connected. We'll talk soon.